So we're continuing in Philippians and chapter 2. We're now in verse 19. It says, if the Lord Jesus is willing, this is Paul again writing to the Philippian church. If the Lord Jesus is willing, I hope to send Timothy to you soon for a visit. Then he can cheer me up by telling me how you are getting along. I have no one else like Timothy who genuinely cares about your welfare. All the others care only for themselves and not for what matters to Jesus Christ. But you know how Timothy has proved himself. Like a son with his father, he has served me in preaching the good news. I hope to send him to you just as soon as I find out what is going to happen to me here. And I have confidence from the Lord that I myself will come to see you soon. Very short passage from Paul, the apostle, Paul, the church planter, Paul, the person who brought the gospel to the Philippian church, is now writing to them because he really cares about them. He cares about their welfare. He cares about what's happening in their lives. He cares so much so that he would send Timothy, who is like a son to him, to go to encourage them, but also to get news from them to bring back. To hear about how the Philippian believers are doing. And this is Paul, who's writing from church, from most likely from Rome in prison. And when he says, I'll find out what's going to happen to me, we spoke earlier in chapter 1 about the fact that, it was really, there were two things that were going to happen. Either Paul was going to be released or he was going to be executed. And at one point in chapter 1, he's really saying, it would be better for me if I were to die, but I'm sticking around here, and I think I'm going to stick around here because I can be fruitful and I can be good for you. And Paul, in the shadow of potential death, his concern is about the well-being of others, of the Philippian church. It reminds me of a text exchange I had yesterday with a pastor who literally lives in the middle of the Sahara Desert. It's a very safe place from the coronavirus to live in the middle of the Sahara Desert. He lives there because he lives constantly under threat of death. He's a believer in a country, in an area that it's not safe to be a believer. And he has a bounty on his head, actually, if someone can find him. But he is faithfully serving God in those areas. And yesterday he's texting me because he had heard that I was sick, and he was concerned for me and very concerned for me living in such a dangerous place that has this virus everywhere. this man who lives under threat of death every day of his life for his faith. It just struck me, how can you have that kind of care for other people? How how do I live my life like this brother, like Paul, in a way that even when I'm under threat, even when I'm sick, even when I have needs of my own, how can I live in a way that I care about others in the midst of all that? Uh, I I try to, but I don't think I succeed in the way that Paul does, or in the way that this pastor friend of mine does. So I'm praying that God will give me a bigger heart, a heart that has room for compassion even when I'm hurting and in pain.